Hello, and welcome back to IGP Chronicles. I'm Jaquasia.
I'm Chris.
And we're back after a week off. And I think today, mostly want to talk about kind of tracking and start to discuss that because there's a lot that goes on when it comes to tracking. And there was a lot that I guess went on at the quali trial.
You mean specifically in the act of tracking or the trial tracking, or what happens at the trial for tracking?
Like trial tracking.
Got it.
Yeah, I don't know if we can
That'd be a lot of
get into the whole training aspect of it, because that's a whole. I mean, we can talk about it, and I'm sure we'll touch on the training side of it because that's just part of it. But yeah, so the quali trial happened. So the team is picked. The WSV team is picked, and so it features. I want to save this so I don't get it wrong. So we've got Teresa Courier is USA 1, Greg Dowd USA 2, Bogdan Kawa is USA 3, Frank Phillips USA 4, Aaron O'Shea is USA 5, and Helena Gallagher is the alternate. Yep. So,
congratulations, you guys. Very nice.
Top German Shepherd dogs in the country will go to Germany, correct? In October. It's in Meppen this year.
Back to the homeland. Back to the homeland.
Back to the homeland. Somebody's homeland. Except for the Czech dogs.
Yeah.
Even though they're German Shepherd dogs, but that's a whole other thing. But they originally thought they were going to have the waist high, and then a couple weeks prior, it moved to
ankle high,
mid-ankle.
Then we see pictures of the fields that were all scored up for. It looked like to me either wheat or rye.
I think it's hay though.
Yeah,
that's what hay looks like up north.
Well, if you recall, 3 years ago. Our hay farmer scored the fields and did winter rye.
Yes.
And he had to score the fields that way for the rye to work properly.
I had not heard of winter wheat or winter rye till I moved down here. So I feel like
you can't grow winter wheat, winter rye when it's snow on the ground.
But that's why I feel like, because it was in Pennsylvania,
right.
that it's probably something similar to hay, or it was hay, that I don't know which it was. So maybe somebody can enlighten us. But either way, the tracks looked small.
They knew they had this trial a year ago, and they knew they had to have tracker for $20 a year ago.
This
for
is the
$20.
hard part for me to understand. It's Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I know it's hard to find tracking, and I'm not disputing that. However, it's 20 dogs.
That's it.
20. So if
we tracked 35 plus 10 FHs at the regionals, and no tracks on top of each other.
Well, even when we went up to Pennsylvania,
oh God,
they had I mean, being from
beautiful.
I'm not from Pennsylvania, but my family lived in Pennsylvania for a long time. I mean, you just drive, and there's green. It's like kind of feels like the Mecca, and you know you're going to have to drive for tracking, so it's very hard to believe that within an hour of wherever the venue was, that there was not
a spot for 20 tracks.
And there was looked like there was hills, because they went over and they would disappear for a little bit. But the tracking this time of year normally is very green and plush, because it's similar to where I was in New York and Connecticut. First cut is normally June.
Right.
So you're coming up where you could be close, but they did change the date, because normally it's like the 1st and 2nd,
right,
and it was a weekend after, and I don't know if they did that for whatever reason, but again, if you can communicate with the farmers, ideally you can know when their first cut is going to be, and maybe hold the trial before the first cut. Chico leaving the fields is very concerning, because
it's not, for me, it's not concerning. It's telltale of there was problems.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that he would have left that kind of assignment if things were as they should have been. That's my opinion.
But that's what we said even in our preview, that Chico being there was like, it's going to be, everything's going to be done by the book, and so you can't say. And then once he was,
apparently there was a change of the something the night before or whatever. And I'm not in the social media spotlight or as much as I don't follow it as tightly as probably I should sometimes, so I don't know all the things. I do know though that there was a dog that got on another dog's track, and from my understanding, it got on the track before, or the way it was explained to me, it sounded as if both dogs should have gotten retracks, although both of them did not.
But those tracks have to be very close.
That's my thing. Is like if you only had to track 10 dogs that morning,
right.
There should have been no way possible for a track to be on a track.
I mean, because ideally you're laying them at least a leash length because the dog is allowed to,
Yeah.
you know, if they are working the track, they can go a leash length off. And that's normally when the judge would call it, saying
Right.
like your dog is not on the track at all. So the fact that they were able to go on another track means they definitely weren't a leash length, and something wasn't marked properly. Yeah, you're tracking 10 dogs. I mean, obviously you have to have space for 20 dogs, but you estimate that you want to have 25 because if you need a retrack, you're going to need more space.
Exactly.
So you're going to, yes, you know there's going to be 20 tracks, but if something goes wrong, you want to have enough space for 25, maybe 30 tracks. So the fact that the tracks were laid close enough for another dog to be on another dog's track, knowing, we've been at competitions, that doesn't happen.
Plus, this isn't a club trial.
Yeah.
This trial chooses the team.
Yes.
And I don't think we have a bad team at all. I think we have a great team. But at the same time, it's like,
It's stress that they shouldn't have to deal with, though.
give them all the same fair shot and put them in a tracking spot to where they can track that track and not have the concerns of being in somebody else's track. Now, if your dog goes out there and fumbles, then you fumbled. But if your dog goes out there and has a trouble because another dog was that close to its track, then that's just shitty to have to deal with that, knowing that you're trying to make the world team with this dog at this point.
And this is not a sanction, like this is not a real trial. This doesn't go in the scorebook. This is, your goal is to just go there, do your best,
Yeah.
and make the team. And the last thing you want to think about is
Equipment malfunction, which is
Or-
basically what it is.
Yes.
I mean, if the organizer did not have proper tracking or adequate tracking or enough tracking, then that is a equipment malfunction at that point, and that's not in the control of the competitors.
well, we do know that an email was sent out while the competitors were asleep,
Right.
dictating that there was a mix-up or whatever with the tracking fields and that they had to switch fields despite being told that the fields were set, which we've encountered, and that is the most, I cannot, like for me, knowing how stressed I get in trial, and tracking is my weakest phase as a handler, the amount of stress that would cause me when I wake up, I would be like, I'd have to like dial myself in so hard to knowing that like, okay, now it's a different field. Is it the same field? Why would they switch fields? Like now my brain is like anxiety mode.
Well, for my situation, we were lucky enough to be in Airbnb with Dawn and Thomas. And Thomas is a super early bird, and he happened to check his email that Sunday morning.
Well, they
I never check my email in the morning, and he luckily saw it and said, "Hey, did you see where you have to be there 40 minutes earlier?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So we had to
yeah.
put
So
it
to
in a different
back
gear.
up, because people don't know the situation, because we never talked about this
Yeah.
actually at all. At Nationals,
This year, last year,
what this past
this past year.
2023 Nationals, the flights are set. Flights are set at draw night. You get your flight. So, like you said, we don't check our emails because if there's something important, like something happening in our lives, even somebody's going to text or call us. We don't check emails. They do say you're supposed to check your email for important information. However, I feel like that was super unfair. But on Sunday you tracked, and your flight time was set for a certain time.
Yep.
And it was like 7, you were like the first flight. It was early in the morning.
Yeah.
We had to be there at like 17.
And I think what saved our butts really was we were only staying like 15, 16 minutes from where the track meet
However,
was.
we had 6 dogs. We had 6 of our dogs with us. No, we only took 6.
Yeah.
So we had 7 of our dogs with us who have to get pottied, walked. We knew we had to be there at a certain time, so we had gotten up and we were starting walk, but we weren't rushing because our time management was perfect that morning. And again, luckily we were staying with Dawn and Thomas. Dawn had checked her email and saw nothing. Thomas checked his email after her,
Right.
and that's when he saw that your flight had been moved.
And the flight came in
Hour.
at like 6:20 or something like that.
Yes.
That morning.
Yes. So the email came in at about 6:20 in the morning saying that the flight had moved up an hour, which is a big chunk of time.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, we were already up and dressed and already kind of
Well, the
situating
plan was
dogs.
to have everything out of the house when we left.
That's right. Yeah,
and
we were gonna
not have to come back to the house.
Right.
And just leave from the trial field,
But that didn't.
get on the road. But we did have to
We
readjust
had to
all
like
that.
hurry up and throw. Everyone was like quick potty break, throw everybody back in, make sure everybody had water real
And go.
quick, and like jump in and go. We somehow, like you said, we were staying close. So although the flight had been moved up an hour, we still arrived at the new. So the new time had been set. We were there 3 minutes late.
Yeah.
They drew before you arrived, stating that you were late, even though they had moved up the time. Luckily, Mike Sweeney called and said, "Were we close?" And
He had texted
the wrong
the other
Chris
Chris
Thompson.
Thompson.
Yes, the problem with having 2 Chris Thompsons.
So we get there 3 minutes late. We pull up to the meetup, and everybody's in their cars.
And we actually weren't 3 minutes late because we stopped to say hello to the tracking team. Because we were coming up a road like this, and the meeting area, we could see we had to go like around a corner. So we stopped and said hello to the tracking team, and as we pulled away from the tracking team, Sweeney called. So we were 3 minutes late from the new time, but we weren't like 20 minutes late. Yes, technically we were late, but they still drew before you got there, and somebody drew for you.
But the problem with all that is, if we were 3 minutes late or 30 minutes late, the rules state
You're supposed to draw for tracks at the tracking
field
spot.
at
In
the
front of the
tracking field,
judge.
yes, not at
Not
the meetup
at the
spot,
meetup spot.
because this was another source of contention at a trial a couple of years ago, to where we did draw at the tracking meetup, and there was a thing made of it. Anyway, there was another situation.
But go back to what the rule book says.
What does the rule book say where you're supposed to meet? Where you're supposed to draw for tracking?
According to the USCA rule book, you're supposed to draw in front of the judge at the tracking field.
Right.
So you can meet up and do the line check. The actual drawing of the tracks should be done at the field in front of the judge, so that ideally nobody can call ahead, and it just ensures that it is fair. So there's other situations that have presented themselves before, which is why we know that rule.
Just to clarify for those that don't know, the reason behind that being a rule is because if this guy on the tracking team knows that me and him are good friends, and my dog has a problem with this or that, he can lay the track so that it's for my dog, and he knows I'm track 3, and he happens to pick track 3, or he gets assigned, or he asks for track 3, then track 3 can be different than 1, 2, and 5, 6. So that's why it's supposed to be after the tracks are laid in front of the judge, so that all tracks are laid the same way all the time across the board, consistently.
And you're not supposed to know where your track goes.
No.
Even if the tracks are laid by the time you're at the meeting spot, you shouldn't know. Somebody shouldn't be able to text you and say, "Hey, what track did you get?" You're supposed to just go out there and trust your dog and hope they do the best based on your training.
Now you can ask which way it goes, but there's no reason they have to tell you.
They don't have to tell you. So either way, we got there. They had drawn for you. It just so happened that that weekend of Nationals, your knee was
I was in bad shape.
in really bad shape, and you drew the last track. We didn't see anybody draw.
Right.
So we actually don't know how it was drawn, and if you really did get the last track.
What's so significant about that is, like, a lot of trials you go to, there's a corridor. There's track and a track and a track and a track off each side. Well, we're in Indiana, and Sweeney had scored thousands of acres of
A
tracking
lot of
fields, so there was
tracking.
not a situation of where we have to do a corridor or nothing like that. So they just started in a field and just like track 1, track 2, track all the way down to 8. Well,
And it was soybean
it
field.
was a very, very long walk to the track. I've been on a cane all weekend. I sat the cane down long enough to go on the field, and that was terrible anyway. And my dog was way off on everything we were trying to do. And I was track 8, the deepest track into the field.
It was, Mark Palumbo
Rough.
came back on the way and he told me it was half a mile you had to walk to your track, which when you're on uneven ground with a hurt knee, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I never walk out with you for trekking, and I met you halfway just so I could help walk Exo back, because I knew it would take, after you walked out there and walked the track, it would take so much energy. Plus, I knew he'd get excited to see me as you got closer.
So, yeah, it was a long walk.
So it was one of those where they tell you you're going to walk to your track. And it wasn't hot, but it's still a walk where your dog needs to be prepared for that. And if you're already struggling with walking, like, you had to walk out early just to try to get out there on time.
And I don't mind being the 8th track if a normal weekend. If I drew track 8, I'm fine with that. And my track was perfectly fine. My dog worked his butt off on a very hard tracking surface.
Yeah.
It was not easy for him at all. He did, and I didn't realize, I didn't know it was a chair. And when he took the right to go down the chair instead of the left for the pee, you know, it freaked me out for a second, but I watched his body language and realized he was tracking, so I let it go. But it's just that the whole situation of all of it was the being hurt the way I was and being able to not know really what happened.
And then we talked to Sweeney after, when he did a seminar here for us, and we didn't realize, he thought when I was approaching him to talk about it, because obviously we're married, he thought I was approaching as your wife and approaching him as chair of the event, where I was kind of approaching him as chair of the event and he was competing, but I was mostly approaching him because he's vice president.
Right.
And I'm assistant regional director, and we kind of, that's where my head was, is that we were wearing our hats, and he misinterpreted how I was presenting it. And I wasn't like rude or anything, but then after, when he was here and I explained that, he's like, I didn't even think of that, like, you were doing it in a professional manner. He's like, that didn't even like cross my mind.
Well, he was trying.
So, again, there's, because of that situation, as well as the other time in Indy, where there was the draw at the meeting spot, and there wasn't a formal complaint, but there was just like, kind of like something said, I guess, at some point.
Redrawing.
Yeah.
But there was talk about a redraw at the track and field.
Because they did draw at the meeting spot.
Yeah.
So.
And some of these places, like a WDC, we were like 10 minutes from the meeting spot to the track and field, where I tracked it anyway. So it's not like you can't do a whole lot to fix anything right there. But some of these times you meet up at a meeting spot and you're driving 30 minutes, 40 minutes to the actual tracking field.
They might be laying the tracks while you're driving there.
Plenty of time for if there is going to be any foul play. And I'd say I'm not accusing anybody of any, because I've not experienced any. I don't feel like anyway. But it's time to do something if you wanted to, I guess.
Right. And so after all these little things, though, with us hosting regionals this year, we do, and having the whole issue of the tracking issue that was not brought to our attention at the 2023 regionals that we held.
You can touch on that. Go ahead.
The issue was, and again, so when you're running an event, you do delegate things to certain people because you can't be everywhere at once. Now, we were at the stadium.
We basically had 2 trial secretaries.
We have an official trial secretary, but we also had somebody else who is very well versed in trial secretary duties and has done it a number of times, assisting the tracking people so that the tracking coordinator didn't have to worry about paperwork and microchip check and leash measuring. That was for kind of our other trial secretary, our unofficial one.
So the track coordinator only had to worry about tracks.
Yes, the tracking coordinator had to worry about how the tracks were laid and that aspect, which is enough to worry about. So it was set up great, and she was doing everything she was told to do.
Right.
However, apparently when the tracks were being drawn, the people drawing the tracks didn't see their number.
Right.
And it was written down, and then when they got to the tracking spot, they were told what track they were.
Which is also, and if I don't care if it was our trial, because we did not do that, didn't ask for that to be done. Didn't find out until 4 or 5 months later that it was done.
Almost a year later. It was December.
Yeah, but that's another spot for somebody to cheat.
Yes.
Period.
So again, that was not brought to the trial chair's attention until 10 months later. And luckily, we went to a trial and somebody who had competed was talking about that. Yep. Otherwise, we may not ever know that happened.
Right.
So then, knowing that happened, we learned from that we will sit down with the judge and just make sure that everything is done, everything's laid out.
Everything's going to be done by the rule book, so there's no reason for anybody to complain.
We're all on the same page before we break apart, because once you're at the stadium and they're doing tracking, they were just feeding us information, scores, and any important information, but you don't micromanage. That's why you put people in charge. So having a sit down and just discussing with the judges how everything's going to go, stuff like that. Like, okay, we're going to meet at the spot, do the microchip check, because also at that trial, I was entered for an FH.
Right.
There was only 4 FHs, so I don't know and we were tracking somewhere different than the IGP people. So I don't know if that played a factor too. However, that's why I didn't know about it, because that didn't happen when we drew. So that also kind of shouldn't have happened, because it was different for FHs than it was for IGP, which isn't fair. And I made sure at that trial, we were trying to be super fair, because I didn't even know where the tracking fields were.
Right.
Gigi and I still failed. But even if we had done well, you couldn't have said that we knew where the fields were or anything like that. I was like, no, y'all ain't going to, no, you're not going to set me up.
So,
but there has been a lot of situations where that has happened. We've learned, again, we will sit down with the judges, go over everything, and that way everybody's on the same page. There's no confusion. And according to the rule book, again, it does say you can't draw.
Right.
It says you have to draw in front of the judge at the tracking field, so that's what will be done for any trial rerun from here on out.
The thing is, like, at a club trial, if a judge says, I like to do this or that or the other, and if it's within reason, there's some leeway there.
But if the rule book says it.
There's a championship, it's just going to be as the rule book says.
If you practice that at a club trial, though, it becomes even harder to do at a championship. Where it's easier to do at a club trial, a lot of times you don't have a meeting spot. Right. You just show up at the tracking field and you draw there. That's for sure something that we've learned from running a trial and being in trials. Just in case anybody was wondering, that's what the rules say. I don't know what the FCI rules say. I need a copy of that scorebook for sure, but I'm sure it's pretty similar.
When you talk about club trial tracking, that's another spot where judges have ways they want to see things. Like some judges I've been and go lay a 1. Okay, see you back in a couple minutes. Or go this way, I'll blow a whistle, or I'll yell. And that can sometimes get out of hand if the judge isn't really paying attention, because the rules state on the 1, there was not a 300-page track at our club trial.
Yes, there was.
The smallest one was probably 350, 375. I know for sure mine was 425 because I counted. I always count. You know that?
I know my second leg. My first leg was a little shorter. I know that. I know
Mike Lorraine, he was, I know, at least probably closer to probably 400 too. So, I mean, if you're going to watch it that close, then you need to watch it that close and count, in my opinion.
But also, though, maybe he was counting, though, and miscounted or wanted them to be longer or whatever.
You can't want them to be longer if the scoreboard says 300.
I feel like my track was pretty close to 300. I know my second leg was long, because I know my first leg was definitely not 100 paces. I think it was more like 80.
Well, that's because you're in that corner there.
And I was in that weird corner.
Yeah.
And he, like I said, we made it up on that second, because my second leg was definitely probably.
Right. Sorry.
So, what?
Your second leg is 120, 130. We'll come back to that.
Yeah, so I feel like my second leg was definitely 120, 130 paces. I felt like I walked for a while. I know you said that
Right. And
they don't, but then at what point does it become a slippery slope that certain things in the rule book have to be adhered to
No,
and
you're right
certain
about that.
things don't?
I'm just saying some judges do it certain ways, and I'm okay with whatever on that is. Like,
That's my
yeah,
discussion. If you're okay with them breaking the rules here, then they can break the rules
I'm
whenever.
not saying to break the rules. I'm saying if you're going to watch it and you want it to be, because it's supposed to be 300, then
Right.
make it 300. Like,
Right.
I'm not complaining because I never do 300 pace tracks. It's always a 3. So
Right.
the fact that my track was close to 400 paces didn't matter. My dog didn't track either way.
Right.
I knew going in that my dog had an issue and it may not happen for me that day, and I did not choose to pull because I wanted to see how his temperament was going to be for the rest of the trial, no matter what happened on the track.
Right.
Which is exactly what I did get to see, because the track happened not exactly like I thought it would, but I knew it didn't go well, so it wasn't enough to pass. And the judge did give me ample opportunity to pass.
Right.
So I'm not complaining about the judge or anything about what happened at this trial. I'm just saying that if everybody's on the follow the rule book thing, then it must kind of needs to be followed more uniformly across the whole platform.
Yeah. Starting with watching the
Right.
tracks be laid. So that was kind of a lot more than I thought we'd get into with tracking, but I don't know what else to dive into. We talked about that. I don't know if early on, I think something in tracking that I did not really was not aware of was the temperament test part.
Yeah.
Until I realized that you have to come out, get your dog gets out, they do the microchip tattoo check, and they measure your lines, and they do a temperament test at that point.
Right.
And just kind of, to make sure that the dog is okay to be on the trial field. And that's not something I think I ever thought about prepping for, because you have to take your dog out and then you put your dog back, and then you might have to measure the line and then draw.
I don't know what it was.
What?
I don't know what that was.
That was a pressure washer.
Oh, okay.
I didn't think about it for a second. I was like, I heard a noise. I was about to run. I was about to be gone. I was like, I'm going over the fence. Bye. So we heard a random noise. It's our pressure washer plugged in. It sounded like a chainsaw. So I was about to be out. But I was literally like, I'm going to jump over the fence. You're on your own. But if you train that your dog comes out the car and straight to the field to track, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, we have to do the temperament test and the microchip, and then I have to put you back.
Well, are we gonna
That can really mess your brain up.
like say that the temperament test is part of
I can't hear
tracking?
you.
Because if that's the case, I got one more thing that we can bring up in the topic.
There is a temperament test in tracking.
But are we gonna put that with the tracking? Like right now?
Well, we're gonna touch on it kind of
Okay.
throughout. There is a temperament test in tracking.
Yes, I understand that.
Yep.
So all right, so this is a topic that I won't spend a ton of time on, but I will say how I feel about it. And if you don't agree, it's fine. If you do agree, cool. Temperament tests at tracking field, I have no issues with. Dog being able to be around a crowd of people. I know what the rule book states. The rule book states that at any point the judge can touch the dog.
Yes.
I disagree with that statement, and I will always disagree with that statement for one simple reason. I was pretty sure we're training protection dogs, and if my dog is able to be in this crowd of people and be neutral, and other dogs and be neutral, I don't know how neutral I really want my dog if you're that close to me and I don't know you like that, and he doesn't know you like that. He should be able to have something to say about it, is my opinion on it. And the fact that it's still not a line in the sand on it, as far as what each judge thinks one way or the other, as far as what they would consider temperament or not. So
I've never had a judge touch my dog at that temperament. They normally make them walk through the crowd, and that's normal. Like, your dog should be able to walk through a crowd of people without latching on. That's totally normal.
And this judge did nothing wrong. This judge did nothing wrong because it plainly says he can.
But he
when
also
he comes
didn't
up to
touch
you,
the dog.
he touched every dog.
But the dog that got DQ'd, he did not touch the dog. The dog growled. So That's a very different situation than what you're saying.
And what I'm saying is, he comes to you, the judge. This dog does not know your judge, the judge.
Okay.
You may not know him at all, or you may be close friends with him.
Right.
But the dog is not.
I understand.
And if
that.
he comes inside of your personal space, the dog should be able to say something, in my opinion. Now, he latches out and, goes
Bites you,
stupid.
yeah,
that's one thing.
That's absolutely.
But if he gives a warning, I don't see where that's wrong, because, again, it's like we're training.
Are you talking about a particular situation?
No, I'm just saying in general.
Okay.
I'm saying in general.
I just want to make sure.
If the dog is giving a growl or something to that effect, I don't think it should say in there that the judge can touch the dog. We're not training dogs that this test doesn't say this dog's going to go out in the street and be a police dog or anything else. This is a test that goes in the scorebook.
But the temperament test for a BH and the temperament test for tracking at a 1 are not the same thing.
No.
And the age difference is obviously,
right.
You can do a BH at 15 months. Mm-hmm. You generally don't have a super civil, you're not seeing a ton of civil dogs at that age that are going to latch out.
Right.
You're going to see, a couple here or there probably that are a little more sharp, especially depending on breed. But at a BH, if you do go at the 15 months, or even if they're 18 months, ideally they're under control more where it's not as much of an issue. However, by the time you get to a 1, it's a little different because you're going to be doing bite work. But again,
to get a BH, you could have never. This dog could have never seen a sleep before.
Right. Yeah. And that's very valid. The Lala.
Yeah.
And
never seen sleep still.
She's never.
But,
she probably never will. Their dog to have a BH, and she is a really nice German Shepherd dog who has a great pedigree. Actually, she's never done bite work in her life, and she may never do bite work. And she does have a super temperament. But for their peace of mind, they wanted to be able to see that their dog could handle what the BH dogs handle. And so those dogs, I kind of want her tested more to be like, this is a dog who, they have a baby now, and she needs to be, within reason, under control.
I mean, shouldn't we be able to, under most circumstances, walk down the street with our IGP1 dog,
neutral.
and it be neutral?
Yes.
But if something comes to us and gets in our personal space, shouldn't they be aware of that, and shouldn't they be ready to respond to that?
I know for a fact if I'm walking EXO and you walk up to me a certain way, there's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
And honestly, Cosmos and Zakan get at night. Yeah. Zakan does not like people coming near me. When we go on the beach, he definitely gets
my point with touching the dog.
Very protective. And he's goofy. He can come off the field, though, in protection and be friends with you right after. Yeah. But his suspicion is also very high. And when he's just me and him, it's not a game. He needs to... and he's very intelligent like that. And I like that because if I'm walking on the beach by myself, he sits behind me and I know I wish I would.
That's what I'm getting at. Like, if you have the dog out and you're walking around a crowd of people, and you're relaxed and everybody just kind of whatever, they're not paying attention, they're just like talking amongst themselves, the vibe is different than one person or two people, the secretary's there with them, walking up directly to you with this thing in the hand to check it, the temperament, to check your microchip. Now, you can ask for that.
That is the other thing, though, with in the scenario.
So if you have your dog out for the temperament test and it's walking around a bunch of people that are just milling around, talking amongst themselves, not really paying that much attention to what you're doing, and then you go off to the side, other dogs go through and the other dogs are fine as well. Now, all of a sudden, just this one person, if it's just the judge, or judge and a trial secretary are walking directly to you, and they have a microchip reader in their hand that they're either holding out to do it or to hand it to you, or however they're going to do that. And to me, it's a different situation for the dog in that moment.
Is it because it's a trial situation, so ideally you can prep for it? You know it's going to happen at every trial, after every phase, once you get into championship level. It's a different scenario. However, it's a scenario you can prep very easily for. Like, Gigi does not like people. She likes dog people because they act normal. But if you're weird, then she gets weird. So out in public, I don't let people pet her. However, we practiced a ton that kind of scenario. Somebody's going to come up. You need to sit. I will reach out, take the microchip reader. I will read the chip. I've also practiced having her stand a certain way so that she's looking at me. Because she's very prey and twitchy, She something's moves, and her natural reaction is to grab it, which I don't want in a microchip situation.
Right.
So she's learned she has to stand still. They read her. But so we've practiced that, knowing her temperament. I do know she is twitchy and prey driven.
Right. But I'm not talking about the chip reader. Is if the trial secretary is coming up too, and they happen to have something in their hand. I'm talking about the actual judge being able to get close enough to put his hand.
You're confusing because you're talking about both. You just said that the chip
is in their hand.
Is coming up to them.
They are.
Yeah. Right.
It's the judge touching the dog.
Right, but you were talking about them coming up with in their hand.
Because when the judge wants to touch that dog in that moment, or this judge wants to touch the dog in that moment, that's how it happened. The chip reader was in the hand, and it came up at the same time. The chip reader is just in there as a byproduct, but it's the touching of, once it gets there, touching the dog in that moment. Like, I was nervous about it because I know it says in the rule book you can touch your dogs, but I've not seen it happen a lot, and I know how Otis can get sometimes.
Right. Yes.
So I was a little concerned, like, is he going to do something? Is he going to grumble?
Otis will do the same thing. He'll tell you if he
Otis
doesn't
will
want
love you out in a heartbeat.
He will say,
let you
I'm
know
not
right
interested at all.
So what's concerning to me, is I would never, in any situation, allow Otis to be in a situation where people can touch him.
Now we're in the slippery slope where the rule book says it. So we want the rule book, when we draw for tracks, we want to abide by the rule book. However, when it blatantly says the judge can touch your dog at any time, we don't want to abide by the rule book.
No, I want that out of the rule book.
But you're talking about now where it's in there.
Yeah, I know.
So you just deal with it now.
Yeah, I'm not saying the judge did anything wrong. I'm saying I don't want it in.
But the way you're talking about it, it's like you're saying, like, it shouldn't happen. No, it shouldn't happen, but it's in the rule book, so prep your dog for it.
Yeah, but my argument is it shouldn't happen because it shouldn't be in the rule book.
Well, yeah, we can say it shouldn't. There's a lot of stuff that should be explained better in the rule book, yes.
And you can disagree, but I think that part of that should be taken out because I don't feel like it's a safe place to be because we're training dogs to be protective.
I agree. I also think, though, it's in the rule book. So at this point in our life, if we don't get it taken out, you have to prepare your dog for it, or just say, like, I'm, like, not interested in the sport at this point. Because if we don't do anything to get it taken out of the rule book, which I don't even know how you go about that.
You start a conversation just like this.
I guess the USCA rule book does have variations from the WSV rule book, especially because we have the USP titles, which allow stick hits.
Right.
So our rule book could not say that unless you wanted to, obviously, once you go up to championships, because at the WSV they do that vet check and the dogs have to be touched. If you're declaring for the team, you probably know your dog can handle that kind of thing. You don't declare, or you work on it once you get to that level.
Right.
But once you get past the BH and your dog does pass that temperament test, the judge should be able to test the temperament quite a bit to say the dog is stable enough, not dog aggressive, and can be in a crowd and handle because there is a lot of movement that goes on at trials. So the dogs do have to be able to be neutral, just how we train our pet dogs. But I think USCA specifically could move to take it out part of their rule book because we don't have to have exactly what WSP says. And then, again, have a thing like if you declare for the world team, understand that this rule is in there. Like a judge can touch your dog, or at nationals maybe, or something like that, again, where, because nationals has to be IGP, it can't be USP because there can be no stick hits right now. So saying that at the two national events, the rule is the judges can touch your dog at any moment. And then being like, okay, well, I know if I go to nationals, my dog needs to be prepared for that. But if I just do regionals or club, they're going to temperament check my dog, and they need to be absolutely neutral. But I don't have to worry about them touching it.
Yeah, because he knew.
Schnauzer events and Shepherd events are very different. But he did it in a way that the dogs didn't even notice. Like, I think Cosmos thought it was me touching him because he was very neutral, and he was looking at the dogs, and he didn't make eye contact, but he was looking at their eyes, their, everything to make sure confirmation-wise they look good. And then as he just kind of walked by, and he just kind of tapped mid to lower back, but he just kind of went like this and then kept walking to where Cosmos was literally like, oh, I think that was Mom touching me, so it's fine. To where he got to touch the dog and feel the coat and do what he needed to do without causing an issue, and understanding that, number one, this is a very serious breed,
Well-
and that like they are protection dogs. So there's no reason for me to go up to his beard and grab him by the beard.
And when I say what I'm about to say, I'm not calling out anyone in particular, and I'm for sure not talking about the judge at our trial. But I'm going to say that if you need to touch the dog to know the dog's temperament, you don't need to be a judge. If you can't see the dog's temperament without touching the dog, then I had a judge tell me one time, and I believe this because the more I was around it, the more I actually did judging, is you, by the first 15 seconds, you can know.
But what if that's why you touch the dog?
Hmm?
What if that's why they touched the dog? Because they saw something that was concerning, and they wanted to see if it was really concerning. Because I had that happen to me at my BH where the dog barked the entire routine. And I feel like he was slightly unfair in part of his testing, but I did get my BH and pass. However, he was like dropping the clipboard next to my dog in a down as people and dogs were running, which
They
that sounds like a whip.
And didn't do it to any other dog, I'm sure.
No, but it was because he had barely enough points to pass, and he said he would test his temperament, which I was fine with. However, it got to the point where it was like, well, now that sounds like a whip.
Right.
And luckily, the dog had a great temperament.
Yeah.
And so he was like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you slapping your clipboard? Like, it's fine. But he was totally neutral when it came to regular day stuff. It was just when we were working, I didn't know what I was doing, so I trained him wrong. But
I can say I did that one time as a judge. I told the handler, I am going to push your dog in the traffic.
right.
Because I felt like the dog had a little bit of civil towards people. I wasn't sure if it was because the handler was super nervous and he was feeding off of that. So during the traffic situation, it's a little more relaxed. And when I said push, I didn't do a bunch of craziness. I just had him walk through the people one or two more times than I did every other dog, and that was it. So I could see if it was just nerves, and it ended up the dog was fine.
Right.
It's just the dude was super nervous, and the dog was feeding off of that. Again, and it happened to be another schnauzer. So the schnauzers are very in tune with their handlers. I know now, I didn't know that then, but it made perfect sense as to why a dog was doing that.
Yeah, I was super nervous for that, but I knew that dog, I'd taken him everywhere, and he was always fine. So when we did the traffic part, I'm like, oh, this is the easy part. He does this every day. Like, this is the one time he doesn't barks. It was fine, but I get more nervous during the temperament check than any. Like, I don't even take our dogs to the vet or to the chiropractor because I know I'm the problem. I'm really good with Briscoe for some reason because he's just Briscoe, and I can hold his head. And I worked at a vet office for 5 years, so I know how to hold my dogs. However, I just get so nervous with everybody else that they take in the back, and she's perfectly behaved, doesn't make a sound. They're like, she's great. And I'm like, this bitch is loud as. But Cosmos, you took Zakan to the chiropractor because I was like, for sure, if somebody else does my temperament check, like if somebody else handles my dog, then we'll be fine.
The problem is we need a temperament check on you.
Yes, that is the truth. Like even I'm nervous if I ever get to handle EXO, I'm nervous for the temperament because he does get very spicy when he's with me because I think he feels my nervousness and he gets very protective. So I gotta, it's me. That's also the thing I wish we could take into account. Like Taylor Swift said, it's me. I'm the problem. I get so nervous. My doggos are like, Mom's nervous. Time to be nervous.
Yeah. Like I said, just to reiterate, I was not talking about one judge in particular. I just feel like, and I'm not saying that it's wrong because it's in the rule book now. I'm just saying I feel like if there's any way that we can start something to take that out, that'd be awesome. Because I feel like it puts some people, in an unfair advantage because maybe they trained their dog to be this way because this dog is the dog's hobby and their hobby is shooting, and its everyday life is to be a personal protection dog or to be a whatever dog that it needs to be to where people can't get that close.
Kira had my first appeal dog. Kira had personal protection training to where if you came up to me and you went to hit me, she was trained to bite. So we did all those scenarios while she was training for our IPO. It was IPO at the time. So she was very clear. However, if you walked up and hit me, she would have bit you because that's what she was trained to do. And at that time, I did live alone and I did travel alone. I felt safe with the dog.
Good.
And I could control her. But again, you're not going to come up behind me and hit me and think you're not going to leave with some teeth marks. Like, ain't going to happen.
This judge I don't feel like he approached any kind of like threatening manner or anything like that. He didn't do anything wrong as far as I'm concerned. So I'm not talking about him. I'm just saying in general, I feel like that rule should be out only because it puts a lot of people in a weird spot because of what your dogs should be able to do for you in a real life moment.
But at the same time, too, we always tell our pet dogs that we train, like, no, people can't pet your dog. If you want to pet a dog, get your own.
We specifically tell people not to pet dogs.
If people want to pet your dog, no, tell them to get their own dog.
Yep.
Like, plain and simple. So if we tell our pet clients that, now we're telling bite dogs that they can't have. And again, once you get up to the higher levels, the WSV vet check is very expensive.
And what is a pet? What is that kind of pet your dog? What is a pet?
I don't know.
Is it this? Is it rubbing all over them? Is it getting down there and cuddling? What is a pet?
Is it snuggles?
I mean, it's such a wide area. Like, if this judge sits there for 6 minutes just petting on your dog and the dog decides to do something at that point, it's like, where is the line drawn? Like, what is a pet?
That's the other thing. We would have to distinguish what pet. Even me, though, I see all these, like, my inner love of dogs comes out. I see all these working dogs. I'm always like, oh my gosh, look, it's so cute from afar. And then, like, when I met Reaper, she was like, you can pet him. I was like, oh, wait, what? And then I was like, okay, still have to be calm. And, like, also I know it's a Rottweiler, so there's a moment where you stop petting either way and just gently move away. But, like, still having that brain cell to be like, oh, I'm excited, but it's still a working dog. So I'm not going to, like, run up and be like, look at the cute little Rottweiler.
Right.
I'm just going to gently pet him. And then at some moment, I'm just going to keep talking and stop petting him and act like nothing happened. So if everybody has that kind of brain cell too and understands like there's certain dogs you can't pet and you can kind of see how they look, then there's that. But I think the petting, I feel like initially was put in there to be like they saw something and they wanted to kind of like really make sure it wasn't, you know, this dog is not tagging people as they walk through the crowd off the field, which is definitely something you don't want. So it would be nice if we got that rule taken out to where it just says the dog needs to be neutral in all situations. The judge could approach you, which they do, and make sure you practice. But for now, because the rule's in there, just make sure you understand that you can ask for the microchip scanner. So there's nothing wrong with asking for that, and nobody's going to look at you weird because, like, your dog, your dog is in a, well, Exos moves. So you know exactly where it is. So it's easier for you to scan it because you can find it faster because they're going to try to read a certain part.
And then Otis, I know for sure I'm taking it every time because he's not a mean dog, and I won't call him like a social butterfly. He likes people, but
very.
If he likes you fine. And if he doesn't, he's not going to attack you, but he's going to let you know.
He's very clear though. Yeah. He's not sneaky about it. He's like, I like you, I don't like you. And then you're like, cool, like, thank you for telling me. Like, his groomer, though, Nicole can do whatever to him, and he's like, oh, I love you. But if the one groomer walked by and he kind of was like,
he did.
We're not friends, don't touch me. And he doesn't lash out or bite. He warns you, which is what dogs are supposed to do.
So if he warns the judge, and the judge is trying to touch him, he's out.
As it sits right now, the book says that the judge can't touch them. And if the judge feels too like it's threatening,
then he's out.
Then he's out. So it would be nice if it said just neutral. The dog needs to be neutral in all situations during the scanner. Reiterating, even in the rule book, that you can ask for the scanner, sit your dog, ask for the scanner. Your dog still has to be under control. And that was why I thought I was going to get DQ'd because Zakan jumped. I was like, we have to fix that now because he was being friendly, but also I don't want him jumping because it's rude as shit. But Gigi didn't even notice he pet him because she's so stupid. But yeah, so knowing now what the rule book says right at this moment, just prep your dog for that. But hopefully maybe USCA will move to at least get that rewritten. And so understanding that we are training protection dogs. Neutral is what we need. Neutral dogs who can walk through a crowd, people, other dogs. They should not be reacting to other dogs.
I agree 100%.
They just need to be neutral.
But how can you see that from the dog's eyes? How can you read that? How can the dog? You don't know what that for there and what they feel like is
because somebody's reaching towards you with something in their hand.
Right.
So I don't know what it is, and if I seem uneasy, and again, handler is uneasy.
They're nervous.
A handler like me, who's just nervous all the time. My dogs are gonna instantly kind of be a little tense. They won't now because I prep them, but like they're gonna be tense because I'm tense, just because I'm a nervous person. So Yes, definitely the dog is going to perceive that. And again, when I did personal protection training with Kira, if you reached, you could handshake, but if you reached too fast, that was okay to bite. And if I turn my back, that was okay to bite. So like, now we're getting, I mean, it's a lot for the dogs to think about. So we'll see.
A lot for us to think about, a lot for dogs to think about. If you have a dog that was trained this way, has to be trained this way, it is a personal protection dog or something in real life that needs this.
Right.
And now all of a sudden the judge comes to touch this dog and he comes in it too quick or too whatever, right, and the dog reacts to that, now what? Yeah. Now you got a dog bite on your record.
But
now
you
got to go through a BH again, and then you got to figure out how that goes, and then you got to figure out the next time.
Yeah,
how,
it's just,
you know.
It becomes a slippery slope to where we do have to understand, like we're training protection dogs, and yes, some of them are happy sport dogs, but even those happy sport dogs, I'm sure some of them in a certain situation, they might just reach out and use their mouth just because they use their mouth for everything. And again, Gigi's not civil like that. However, everything that moves, even if it's my hand to pet her, her first reaction is I grab with my mouth, to where when I pet my own dog, I have to be like, hey, it's my hand, be gentle. But that's just because she's a prey dog, which is what we still want, prey drive in these dogs. That was a good tracking kind of thing where we didn't touch too much on we did touch on prepping your dog. Right. And understanding that certain rules are in the rule book now, so we just have to prepare for them, and hopefully figuring out a way to bring it to the executive board.
Yeah,
I would imagine.
I don't know how you go about it, to be honest with you, but
I should know that. I feel like.
It's,
well, you could get to your regional director, no?
It probably.
I mean, they could bring it maybe to the board. That's. Maybe. I feel like that would be the first step. Yeah. I actually am going to find that out because I should know that, number one, and number two, I can contact our regional director very easily. So that's what my goal is. That's one of my, I need a book of like Jaquasia-isms. That's my goal for the next podcast, is to find out the chain of events, like how you get it changed. And I would imagine that'd be the first step.
One quick thing.
We also got our new flag, guys.
Today is Father's Day when we're filming this. Jaquasia's dad is Semper Fi.
My dad's a Marine, so we hung the United States Marine Corps flag up. And I think we might leave it up for a little bit. I like that flag. Yeah, so
Happy Father's Day for everybody out there.
Happy Father's Day.
See you next time.
Yeah, if you guys didn't notice, we have a different flag up because it's Father's Day. And my dad is a Marine. And if you meet him for 5 seconds, that'll be like the second thing out of his mouth after his name. He's very proud to be a Marine. So we hung the United States Marine Corps flag up in his honor. So happy Father's Day to all the fathers. The fagers. It's his faja. Austin Powers. Have you ever seen Goldmember?
Yeah.
Austin Powers faja. And we'll see you next time.
Later, guys.
So later. Bob, be careful.